Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, broskies. Big Paul here today. And I'm going to do a deep dive breakdown into BPC-157. This is one I've been meaning to do for a while. I had a question last week on the Anabolic Q&A. You can go check that episode out from last week about my favorite peptides. I am going to start doing some breakdowns on peptides. People have been asking me a lot about doing more deep dives into peptides. I think I hurt some people's feelings when I said last week that I don't think BPC-157 is effective as something, say, like retatrutide or HGH, some of the other stuff that pharmaceutical companies are investing in. That's not to say that it doesn't work. I have used BPC-157 quite effectively, and I'm going to use it again during my recovery from my shoulder surgery. We'll talk about it here in just a little bit. Before we get into it, though, I also want to let you guys know that I will be putting my notes, a little sort of ebook fact sheet about BPC-157 up on my website for free. You can download it. Just need to register your email address. I'll have some information on that, and I'll also register you for my mail list, which has cool information I will keep you updated on periodically with free articles, inside information, stuff that I share with my followers. And folks, we'll dig into the BPC-157 deep dive in just 1 second. All right, so in the last Q&A, I think I hurt some feelings when I said I didn't think BPC-157 was as effective as, say, something like retatrutide. Man, you would have thought that I called dudes' mothers a bad name when I said that. I love BPC-157. I've used it quite a bit. It does some really cool stuff. But I'll just say this. If it were that fantastic, the pharmaceutical companies would be dumping a ton of money into it. It's not to say that it doesn't work. I do find it to be effective. And I think it can be beneficial when you have injuries or chronic inflammation, some other issues that you run into as a bodybuilder, soft tissue injuries such as small muscle tears, things like that. It can be very helpful. So we'll dig into it here, and I'm going to talk about BPC-157, properties of BPC-157. The full name is Body Protection Compound 157. Very novel, right? It is a pentadecapeptide, 15 amino acids in this peptide. Synonyms are PL14736 in BPECin, I think that's how you said it, or BPEPSin. BPECin, I think it is. It's a synthetic peptide derived from partial sequencing of the human gastric juice BPC, derived from a naturally occurring protective protein found in the gastric juice in the gut. This is the stuff that makes your gut heal quickly from injuries, such as ulcers and tears and things like that. Your gut is a very toxic environment full of acid. From what I understand, I think it's also in your mouth, and don't quote me on that one as well. If you'll notice that mouth injuries heal, you get a cut in your mouth, it's going to heal a lot faster than it would on your body. BPC is the peptide that is responsible for that sped up healing. Bioavailability, it is suspected to be orally active. I would say through anecdote, we know that to be true, that it does seem to be orally active. Guys, I've taken it before for stomach ulcers. I've had issues in the past with stomach ulcers, and it definitely has helped calm those down and heal those up. I had a chronic Lyme's disease and was on antibiotics for like 2 years fucking straight. It really fucked my stomach up for years afterwards. I finally have got my stomach mostly straightened out in the last couple of years, but it took me like 7 or 8 years. Oral BPC-157 was something that I did deploy and use as an aid for my stomach recovery. Discovery first described in the 1990s by researchers in Croatia. I will say this, injections seem to be more potent and effective than oral administration, but if you have gut issues, oral administration can be a way to use it. Research initially investigated for gastrointestinal healing, later expanded to muscle, skeletal, and neurological and cardiovascular studies. Effects of BPC-157. You have to excuse me, this text is very small. It is in the show notes, the document that I have up on my website that you can download for free. All you need to do is register with your email address. The link is in the video description below. So if you want all this stuff, it is in my show notes. Also with dosing protocols and how that works. Gastrointestinal protection promotes regeneration of intestinal mucosa, helping conditions like IBD, leaky gut, esophageal damage. I also, from the ulcers and acid reflux that I had from being on antibiotics for multiple years with the chronic Lyme's disease that I had, I also had basically a hole burned in my esophagus, and the BPC, I think, helped heal that up. IBS, leaky gut, things like that, it can certainly, seems to provide some help. It's not going to hurt anything. Anti-inflammatory effects. BPC-157 has been shown to downregulate pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF-A, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and interleukin-6. Decreased production of pro-inflammatory mediators such as prostaglandins and leukotrienes. I think that's how you say that. Prostaglandins are an issue a lot of times guys run into with taking things like Tren. There is a prostaglandin response to some stronger PEDs, some of the night sweats, things like that. The Tren flu that you get when you take Tren. I am just speculating, but maybe BPC-157 could help with that potentially, since it does seem to lower prostaglandin response to things. Improved recovery from soft tissue injuries. These are the ones that are probably going to mean the most from bodybuilders' perspective. These are the things that I have used it for in the past, and I find that most bodybuilders are going to use it for, gym bros. Bone, tendon, ligament injuries, things like that. Now, I want you to keep in mind, like guys are all the time asking me if my shoulder needs surgery. Bro, have you tried running some BPC-157 and TB500 and maybe get some stem cells? Yeah, trust me, man. I've been through the whole thing. If you have major structural damage, it's not going to fix it. If you have minor issues or if you're recovering from surgery, it will help with that. It is not the panacea, fix-all, magic juice that's going to put into your ruptured ACL and fix it. It's not going to fix that. It will help with minor injuries, I would say. And it does seem to speed up recovery from surgical repairs. Animal models indicate that BPC-157 promotes myocyte muscle cell regeneration and prevents muscle fibrosis, which is interesting. Enhances blood vessel formation, angiogenesis around injured muscles. One of the things that's important for recovery from injury is blood supply. And a lot of times why injuries are slow to recover is because of limited blood supply to certain areas in the body. Directly injecting BPC-157 into the injury site seems to increase vascularity into the site, bringing more blood supply, thus the ability to heal. Studies, mostly rodent models, show that BPC-157 accelerates the healing of damaged tendons and ligaments. In my personal experience, I don't think it does a whole lot when it comes to tendon and ligament injuries. I mean, maybe if you have like minor sprains, minor tears, it could help with injuries. But once you're at a certain point, such as what I have going on with my shoulder, or an ACL rupture, or I have a ruptured UCL in my elbow, I'm a fucking mess, dude. it's not going to fix that stuff. Minor injuries, I say it's probably going to help with. So just keep this in mind, keep that in perspective. It works to a certain degree. It does not walk on water, feed the masses bread, and make water from wine, wine from water. It's not going to do all that, but it does help. Promotes regeneration of the enthesis tendon to bone interface, which is notoriously difficult to heal. I believe that's the insertion area. Improves fibroblast outgrowth and collagen reorganization at injury sites, which is also important. And we compare it with other compounds to help with those aspects of it. I have used it in combination with HGH, Anavar test in situations where in TB500, which I'll do another video on, we'll get into the deep dive on TB500, usually which is paired up with BPC-157. Neuroprotective properties, reduces oxidative damage in nerve cells, which is very, very interesting. Cardiovascular tissue repair. This is an area where I am very fascinated with it because cardiovascular issues seem to be the number one risk factor for PED users. Hell, just in general, they are the number one risk factor for men over the age of 40. If you're between the ages of 40 and 65 and you're going to have some sort of acute life event that's going to kill you, it's most likely going to be a cardiovascular event, heart attack, stroke, blood clot, something like that. So staying on top of this stuff, especially as we get a little bit older, is important. And we are also adding another risk factor and potentially increasing the chances of a cardiovascular event when we are taking PEDs, high blood pressure, increased clotting risk, things like that. And what is interesting with BPC-157, it seems to protect endothelial function, modulates nitric oxide pathways, and promotes angiogenesis, the formation of new blood cells when blood supply gets limited, or new blood vessels, not cells. Blood supply gets limited to an area of the body is going to help improve that. Now, keep in mind, you can't remodel the aorta, major vessels like that, but maybe it could help a little bit. Nitric oxide protection is going to help with your vascular health, keeping the blood vessels flexible. Stiffening of the arteries is typically the start of atherosclerosis, and if we can keep nitric oxide production up, we are going to have nice, flexible blood vessels, arteries that are less likely to accumulate damage and thus laying down plaque. Potential mood and anxiety regulation effects may influence serotonin, dopamine pathways in the brain. I have not really noticed that when I'm on it. Maybe it does have some mild effect. And then, as we mentioned earlier, increased collagen synthesis. So, safety and side effects. Is BPC safe? Is there anything we need to be concerned about when we're taking BPC? Keep in mind, this is mostly anecdote that we have, but low toxicity has been reported in preclinical studies. There's been no really noted risk, major risk factors with it. Side effects, minimal to non-reported in animal studies. Anecdotal human data shows injection site irritation. I mean, we're jabbing ourselves with everything known to man. We're used to that shit. But just keep in mind, this has not passed FDA approval or clinical trials to acquire FDA approval. Most likely that is just a funding thing. Pharmaceutical companies didn't find it to be effective enough or have a big enough market. It could be effectiveness or market value to warrant the money it takes to go through a clinical trial and have it approved for use through the FDA. Now, keep in mind that with some of these experimental drugs, it's not that maybe they don't work. It's just the pharmaceutical companies maybe have determined there's no profit in it. There's huge profit in GLP-1s. Everybody wants to lose weight. So they're going to invest a ton of money into those and willing to take the tens of millions of dollars and invest that to make those drugs viable and approved for prescription use in a clinical setting. Something like BPC-157 may not have that big of a market. It may be that it works or doesn't work well enough to warrant that investment, or maybe they just decided they weren't going to waste the money on it. So we have it available through other means. It's just a research chemical at this point. Bodybuilding uses for BPC-157, I primarily see it of value as minor injury healing, maybe in situations where inflammation is high to help reduce inflammation. Maybe there is some cardioprotective, some cardioprotective properties of it. There are other choices that are probably going to be better if we want to increase nitric oxide production. Cialis would be something that comes to mind. Some of the blood pressure meds also come to mind, something like nebivolol, a beta blocker. There's many other choices that are probably going to be better for us as a community when it comes to cardioprotection. But it may heal, and as we talked about, it may produce vascular expansion. Pharmacokinetics of BPC-157, we're talking about half-life, absorption, distribution, metabolism. The absorption appears to be effective both orally and via injection, subcutaneous or intramuscular injection. If we're trying to get the localized vascularity, improved vascularity, blood flow to the area, you would want to inject it locally to the area that is in question. If you're looking for more of a systemic effect, a subcutaneous injection would be adequate. I don't find it to be that great orally, except for gut issues. If you have gut issues, then you can use it orally, but injection is probably going to be the better path. I will say this, if you're recovering from a surgery, I would not inject it to the site or anything into the site where you had your surgery done at. You are risking an infection. Bacteriostat water, anything that has been mixed, made in a UGL or gray market lab, I would not risk an infection in an injury site. That is terrible. I know of people that have had infections from injections in injury sites and ended up having to go back in and have their surgery completely torn out and redone from injecting dirty stuff into their surgical site. So not smart. I wouldn't do that post-surgery. Probably not the way to go. Metabolism, it's not fully elucidated. Suspected to be enzymatic degradation like other peptides. They're pretty mild in the system. They're not going to stress your liver or kidneys. Half-life, precise half-life is unknown, but exhibits prolonged biological activity in studies. Excretion likely via the renal pathways, urine, and enzymatic breakdown of products, just like eating protein or whatever. It's the same pathway. Doses, typical doses that we see range is 200 to 500 micrograms per day for general use. Duration is often in 2 to 4 week rounds, depending on the injury or condition. Like many peptides, chronic use may down-regulate receptors or reduce the peptide's effectiveness over time. Keep this in mind. I have found that it seems to lose its oomph after about 4 to 6 weeks. That's what I've seen. BPC-157 is most useful in the acute or repair phase So right after the injury, it seems to work the best in that phase. If you're 6 months, a year, 2 years post-injury, like I am with my shoulder, 3 or 4 years, it's not going to do a whole lot. BPC-157 promotes angiogenesis, new blood vessel formation, as we've talked about before, and tissue repair. Prolonged use, in theory, might lead to excessive or abnormal tissue remodeling or collagen accumulation, aka scar tissue. So we do have to keep that in mind, that it may cause the accumulation of additional scar tissue, especially when you have a surgery in surgery site. So just something to keep in mind that you have to be careful with BPC-157, especially post-surgery. Suggested administration routes, as we talked before, subcutaneous is preferred for systemic benefits, intravascular for targeted or muscle tissue healing, oral for gut-specific benefits. Those are the modalities of administration if you're trying to reap various different benefits. My experience, as I mentioned before, I usually use it with TB500. You can get it with it usually comes packaged in a combo with TB500, HGH, and Anavar. And I used all 3 or all 4 together to recover from my ACL surgery when I had that, 6-7 years ago. And I was able to get back to 100% from my ACL tear in about 6 months. It's usually 8 months to a year from an ACL tear before you're back to, I wouldn't say I was 100%. It was like 95%, but my doctor was asking questions like, what the fuck are you doing? I was able to get out of physical therapy like 2 months earlier. Also, most people are fat and lazy and don't work very hard. They're not used to seeing people like us in physical therapy. Once again, it's not going to fix massive structural issues. It is not the panacea of fixing every problem that you've ever had. If you've got a giant pec tear, it's hanging off the bone. If you have a ligament that's 80% ruptured, if you have a torn supraspinatus and a torn labrum, partially torn bicep tendon like I have, and a bone spur in your shoulder, it ain't going to do shit for that. It might help with inflammation a little bit, help cut down on some pain, but it's not going to fix that. It's not going to fix that issue. Surgery and recovery from the surgery, BPC-157 might assist in that part of it, but it's not going to fix the problem. Surgery, once you are at that point, is the only option. In my anecdotal experience, it does seem to pretty dramatically lower inflammation. I find it best for small muscle tears. I've had like little hamstring tears. I've had chronic problems with my groin. I have a groin that I tore, 8-9 years ago doing sumo deadlifts. I don't know why the fuck thought it was a good idea to do sumo deadlifts. I don't even do deadlifts at all anymore. And then I popped my groin, and my groin has just been a pain in the ass ever since then. I'm all the time tweaking it and getting I think there's just a bunch of scar tissue in there. But it seems to help with small little things like that. You get a creaky elbow, you get a creaky shoulder, you get a creaky knee. It can definitely be beneficial and helpful for that. Does seem to lower C reactive protein a bit. I've seen that on blood panels where guys will have high C reactive protein. They run a 4 to 6 week run of BPC-157, and that seems to help it. And like I said before, it seems to lose its effectiveness after 4 to 6 weeks. All right, bros. That's all I got for you on this one. As I mentioned earlier, if you go to the link in the video description below, I have detailed notes on it. There's more in those notes than what's actually in this video. It's all my notes and stuff from the research that I did for this video. I also have my typical dosing protocol that I run when I use BPC-157 and TB500 that's in there if you're interested. I'm just asking for an email address. I promise I'm not going to spam you with a bunch of junk mail. I try to send good information out to people, things that are going to be helpful, nice little bonus inside information, good articles on different things such as nutrition, drug research, things like that, training, mostly nutrition and drug research. I send those out, but it's good information, and all I'm asking is for an email address. All right, folks, that's all I got for you on this one. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for your support. I'll see you on the next episode. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.